It's Monday, March 16th, 2020. Michigan state motto is roughly translated to, if you seek a pleasant peninsula, look about you. But this week, that view is limited to what's out your window, as much of the state of Michigan is staying home. I'm Jer Stays, and this is your Daily Detroit. On today's show, we talk about the executive order shutting down sit-down restaurant service, bars, and more in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Daily Detroit man about town Devon O'Reilly will also join us. Then there are changes in hours at local grocery chains, as well as I wanted to make you aware of a couple programs at the two big local power companies. And finally, a conversation with Charyn Hain, an experienced attorney and advisor at Varnum, about the impact the mandated building closures are having on school districts and how they're dealing with it. It's a big day, but we have to pay some bills for a few seconds. A very quick thanks to our newest members, Kumar, Greg, Matt, Max, Alex, and many more. It's our members that power our community, and we truly appreciate you. You can join them at patreon.com/dailydetroit. Let's get started. The big news today, of course, is the coronavirus and COVID-19 and the local efforts trying to slow the spread. What you need to know is that Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed an executive order that temporarily closes theaters, bars, and casinos. It also limits restaurants to carry-out and delivery orders. The full list of places closed also include, and well, this is a list, so bear with me here, cafes, coffee houses, bars, taverns, brew pubs, distilleries, clubs, movie theaters, indoor and outdoor performance venues, gymnasiums, fitness centers, recreation centers, indoor sports facilities, indoor exercise facilities, exercise studios, spas, and of course, casinos. However, it's important to note that food and drinks can be served through walk-up windows, drive-through, and delivery, so your carry-out option still might be a thing. This is in response to medical experts that say that social distancing is key to preventing the spread of the virus, and reports online that groups of people were not following the voluntary guidelines. As of this recording, and this number can change very quickly, there are 53 confirmed cases in Michigan. However, that number may be higher as currently the state only has the ability to process 115 coronavirus tests per day, and there are more than 800 people currently being monitored. The order is in effect until the end of the month, March 30th. The state of Michigan is joining Washington, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania in similar measures. And there's more. Whitmer signed an order Monday allowing employees to obtain unemployment benefits if they need to care for a family member or aren't allowed to work due to COVID-19. Their eligibility continues through the end of April 14th unless it gets extended. Unemployment benefits will be offered to workers dealing with an unanticipated family care responsibility due to school closures or a loved one who is ill, workers who are sick, quarantined, or unable to work and don't have access to paid leave options, and first responders and healthcare workers who become ill after exposure to a patient with COVID-19. Additionally, unemployment benefits will be increased from 20 to 26 weeks. The application eligibility period will be increased from 14 to 28 days, and the normal in-person registration and work search requirements will be suspended. Whitmer is also working with the Federal Small Business Administration to offer help for Michigan businesses losing money due to the slowdowns related to the coronavirus. And under the order, an employer will not be charged for these benefits if their employees became unemployed because of the order. So the above is good news, but it's clear that these programs won't probably be enough for bars and restaurant workers displaced. A number of GoFundMe campaigns have been set up to help employees, so if you have a favorite bar or restaurant spot, check their social media pages if you're in a place to financially help.
GoFundMe, the personal crowdfunding website that gives you the tools you need to achieve your dreams. Honeymoons, dream vacations, the world was your oyster. That vision of the company vanished almost immediately as we instead became an unwilling linchpin of the American healthcare system.
Although a number of notable places closed earlier than this order, one of the factors I've learned for restaurants waiting is that there were many that had to deal with the fact that insurance wouldn't cover them unless the state did this action. This is same for a number of public events that without the order, organizers and owners wouldn't be able to make claims with their insurance companies, and the contracts that they have wouldn't be able to let them out. Data shows business was already down in the restaurant industry. Reservation service OpenTable says that diners statewide were down 54%, and anecdotal stories from a wide variety of restaurants gives me a window of about 40 to 60% off. Joining me on the line is somebody who we usually see in the studio, but obviously, considering the situation out in the world right now, we're catching up with him by phone. Man about town, Devon O'Reilly. Welcome back to the show.
It's great to talk to you, Jer.
I mean, basically, all the events you suggested like a week or so ago got jinxed. So, I mean, that's not a great record, my man, this one.
It was shaping up to be a great March. So believe me, nobody hurts worse than that or feels worse than that about things the way they turned out than me.
Well, and St. Patrick's Day is something that, because I know you personally, St. Patrick's Day is a big deal for you and your family. I mean, if people didn't catch on to the last name, O'Reilly, it kind of like tells the story itself. But I understand you've been taking this whole thing pretty seriously.
Jerry, yeah. I mean, Devon Patrick O'Reilly is definitely someone who looks forward to St. Patrick's Day every year, the parade, the revelry, all of it. I mean, I literally would say it's my favorite holiday, the heck with Christmas or Easter or any of that. It's my favorite holiday every year. So it's pretty rough not to have it this year. I mean, obviously there are people who are hurting with this too, the service industry and all of that. I'm just a bystander and a reveler who's just really disappointed in how this has all turned out. But yeah, I mean, we want to keep in mind the people that are most affected by it, service industry, the bars, all those places that we're really banking on being crowded this time of year. So that's really unfortunate. Yeah, and you've been off the streets pretty much most of the weekend, right? Like this is something that you didn't really participate. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to kind of sift through all the information and look to what's being said by the smartest people in the room, which is always, sometimes tough to figure out when you're trying to weed through all this information. But, the whole flatten the curve thing is real. And I think, if we can kind of just separate ourselves and distance ourselves, it's important. And I don't care if it means, not going out for the parade, or I know it wasn't the parade, but there certainly seemed to be a lot of people at the bars yesterday, which was disappointing to see. It's not the time for that. You can still get drunk and, pretend you're at a parade, but now is not the time for getting together in groups.
No, not at all. Do you have any suggestions for folks, whether it's food or drink to enjoy while you're, not outside doing St. Patrick's Day?
Sure. Well, I mean, look, you can still celebrate. A little anecdote. Somebody asked me yesterday, is this going to be the first St. Patrick's Day that you don't celebrate? I said, no. What do you mean? I'm going to celebrate on St. Patrick's Day, but that means something different this year. I've got the 8-hour corned beef, potatoes, cabbage, and carrots in the crock pot. Got that going. A little bit of Guinness broth there. Stocked up on some of your favorite beers, Guinness, your Irish stouts, and plenty of Jameson, Tullamore Dew. Get on all the essentials. Get your shortbread. Put on go on Spotify, find your Dropkick Murphys, your Flogging Mollies, your traditional Irish tunes playlists, Rocky Road to Dublin, all that good stuff, and, have a time. Throw on some green. You can still enjoy it.
So do you got any tips for that 8-hour corned beef, man?
The Guinness broth, that's my tip, is put about a pint of Guinness in there to really just marinate and soften things up, give it some extra Irish juices in there.
That's beautiful. Well, Devon, I appreciate your caution. I appreciate you sharing that with us. And, I don't know if you agree, but I think that all of this is going to be something where it means we're going to be able to get out on those patios a little bit sooner if we're fortunate.
That's absolutely right, Jerry. The way I see it is, look, I'm also a huge fan, as you know, of patio drinking and outdoor drinking, and we are on the cusp of one of the greatest times in Detroit and Michigan, which is, that spring-summer transition where we can all get outdoors, and we can still say it. We can still salvage it. We can be out on our patios drinking and out with people, in May if we play our cards right and do the right things here. But the time is now to take those extra precautions so that we can be patio drinking in late May or, when this all blows over.
Well, good sir. It's good to talk to you, and I'm sure we will chat soon.
We will chat soon. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Here are a couple tips on two of the bigger grocery chains in the region. Kroger has changed their hours temporarily to give employees more time to clean, sanitize, and stock the store. Meijer will continue to keep regular business hours, but they've closed the meat and deli counters so that their employees can prep, grab, and go items. In other Meijer news, they also will be donating an additional $2.2 million to over 400 Simply Give food pantry partners to help feed hungry families while they are out of work and school. And we will have links to all of these things in the show notes. I will note that government officials on all levels have been encouraging people to stop panic buying, as there is plenty of product, but it just needs a little bit of time to get it shipped to stores. Now to what the power and gas companies are doing so far. Both Consumers Energy and DTE Energy have suspended shutoffs for non-payment for low-income and senior customers starting today, Monday, March 16th, and that's going to run through April 5th. DTE will also extend its senior winter protection program until May 3rd, 2020, for customers who are already signed up in the program. We will have a link to both Consumers Energy and DTE Energy's programs for more information in case you want to know more. Next, let's talk about the impact of this whole situation on Michigan schools with an expert. Joining me on the line is Charyn Hain. She's a partner in the Litigation and Trial Services Practices team at Varnum Law. Welcome to Daily Detroit.
Thank you.
So I wanted to talk to you around all of the challenges that our schools are facing statewide. As many people know, the governor has ordered the statewide closure of buildings for a time, but that doesn't mean that the work stops, does it, Charyn?
No, it does not. It just means that the work takes on an entire different level of difficulty, as well as takes on new challenges in how to both physically and financially handle the load that school districts are facing.
Well, one of the things I think about right off the bat, and I mean, we'll hit a few different topics here, but our podcast is based in the city of Detroit. There are a lot of people with needs here. And one of the on-the-ground logistical things I think about is things like, school lunches and things like that. There's a lot of students that are dependent on that for part of their food. And I've noticed that there's some programs around that, but do you have any more kind of clarity on what's going on a grander scale?
Yes, you should. If you have access to the internet, you probably can find out what your specific district is doing. The primary things that I've seen my district clients and others do is they are providing meals. Some of them are providing them daily with specific drop-off and pickup times. So, for example, you can come to this location, we're going to do a drive-through, or we may have somebody standing outside handing you food, and come between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. and get your food. Some are doing it every other day, but providing 2 days' worth of food. There's some lifting, actually, of the restrictions, so to speak, on this, meaning that the children who qualify for free breakfast and lunch have to qualify for federally funded money. The federal funding has actually granted a waiver, so now it's less restrictive, meaning that virtually any child age 18 and under can get these food sources without having to necessarily prove that they're one of these students who would otherwise get it if they were in the school cafeteria. And I think everyone has been handling this quite beautifully as far as I can tell from the districts I work with. It's what's in the interest of the children. These children need food. If your district doesn't have a plan, I would be really surprised, but these children should be getting food, and the districts all should have plans in place to make that happen. You just need to make sure you know what your specific district is doing so you can avail yourself of those services.
With all of this disruption going on and closures, there's a lot of worries that people have around, frankly, their paychecks, right? Because it's, there's less revenue coming in for businesses, all that kind of stuff. But it seems like there's already a plan in place for teachers and school employees, as I understand, correct?
Well, the governor at least left it to districts. Her mandate to close school buildings didn't require that teachers get paid. The districts that I've spoken to, most of them plan to pay them. There's also vendor contract service issues. So, for example, some school districts use vendors for their food service or their transportation, and that will be on a contract basis most likely. Everyone is looking to make sure people are financially stable to the extent possible. But again, is going to be on a district by district basis. And that's something that if you are a school employee, hopefully your administration has already communicated this to you. But if they haven't, that's something that you could and should inquire about what their plan is going forward. And of course, the uncertainty here is we're currently closed through April 5. What happens as we approach that day? Is this going to be extended? And then how does that tax the financial resources of the district? So I think it's a very real concern to everyone, including the administration and the people who are pushing out the payroll on a weekly or biweekly basis.
Organizationally and legally, how much do these problems multiply if this gets extended for a long time? What if this gets doubled? What if this gets tripled? Does this get more complicated? Does this get more worrisome? What is kind of your sense?
My initial reaction to that is, in addition to saying yes, it definitely gets more complicated, is my biggest concern would be what are we doing to get these kids educated? Because we really have, for the K-12s, we have probably 2.5, maybe even 3 months of school left. And the Michigan legislature, I believe, currently considering proposed legislation to alter the instructional days required by law. But even if they do that, what does that mean for our kids? Are they going to be able to progress to the next grade level? I don't mean to panic anyone by saying that, because I'm hoping that doesn't happen, but these are things that if we're extended out 6 weeks or 9 weeks, what happens? And those are, I think, one of the reasons why they have ordered school closures is to hopefully slow this and get to a point where we can let the kids back into school so that we don't have to deal with those specific issues and can continue out the school year. Some districts are considering doing online learning. Some are doing online learning just to essentially repeat what the kids, experienced last year, almost like refreshers. Some are looking at options of actually moving the curriculum forward. But K-12s, I would think, generally speaking, probably aren't set up very well to accomplish that. And I think a lot of them, even if they're looking at that could even be 2 or 3 weeks out before they get that set up.
I'm getting the sense here from this conversation that it's there are things that the governor puts down from a centralized point of view, but each of these districts seems to have a lot of autonomy on their own. Can you talk about that a little bit and kind of what that means for folks? Because you not only have public districts, but you also have charters and a whole mix of things going on. It seems to be a kind of, although there's something coming from the top, decentralization in how this is going to get implemented.
Yeah, and I mean, first of all, I'd like to say it needs to be decentralized, because we're going to have a very broad discrepancy between both the financial as well as, the personnel opportunities depending on what district or even what private school you're in, right? So you may have a small district that has much more limited resources. You might have a bigger district which maybe still has more limited resources, and how they can react to that is going to vary. So, as you know, the governor's directive is that all buildings are closed to students for educational purposes. What that's going to look like on a district-by-district basis will vary. And I think the key here is that every educator or administrator I've worked with or talked to is really looking to see what's going to be in the best interest of the kids. Can we get them some kind of structured programming, either through some type of online learning or maybe even some type of programming that we would push out to them to do some reading programs, that type of thing. The other issue, of course, is it's going to vary by your high school programs are going to look a lot different than your K-6 programs. So it really is a challenge for educators, and I'm sure for parents too, who are sitting home with children who are probably wanting to play games on the video system if they have one, or who just don't have opportunities because they need to go to work and they need childcare. So it's really quite a struggle across the board for everyone, and the districts need to address these on an individualized basis because they're going to have individualized constructs and individualized abilities to address these certain issues.
Have you seemed to have gotten the sense that people are ready for this or have been planning for this? Or do you feel like this is something that was just, I don't know if the right term is act of God, but, something that just kind of came in and they just were not prepared for? Is this greater than they comprehended in the past?
Yeah, that's a great question, because when I first heard that they were closing schools, I thought of, the polar vortex from last year, right, where a lot of schools were closed for quite some period of time. And not only that, they had a lot of snow days even outside of that. That's something that here in Michigan we're kind of used to. And, of course, those typically, other than last year, may last a day or two, and then the kids are back. To say someone is unprepared sounds negative, and I don't mean it to be that way, but I'm not sure anyone was fully prepared for or had fully thought out the fact that schools might be completely closed down for this lengthy period of time. At least it hadn't been something that was on the radar, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago when programming could have really been put into place, or those wheels could have started turning. So I do think that this is just an unprecedented situation that, again, I've seen, generally speaking, school administration deal with just making a valiant effort to do whatever they can to ensure that the kids are protected and educated and fed. But I don't think that anyone was fully prepared for this, or maybe they couldn't even be fully prepared for this.
Well, kind of along those lines, and before I let you go, I kind of wanted to ask you, what are some of the kinds of programs or logistics that maybe might surprise people or they might not think about that school districts are having to handle that, it's not maybe in their radar, but it's a real challenge for folks? Well,
the one that jumps right to mind is probably special education students in instruction. So if you have a student who's either has it's called an IEP, an individualized education plan, or a Section 504 plan, those students are required by federal law to have access to education even if they're not physically present in school. Now, I'm not going to bore you with all the details of the law, and that's a little bit of a generalization, but they're entitled to what's called FAPE, Free Appropriate Public Education. So the questions that are raised there are, if everyone's out, I think the law is very clear that if no one is in school, then school districts do not have to provide FAPE to special education students. But what happens when you institute online learning for your regular ed students? Do you need to then somehow provide instruction, whether it's online or through other means, to your special ed students? And you probably do. Another really related to special education is that these individualized plans, they have to be discussed, and a lot of them expire about this time of year. Do they need to have what are called IEP meetings with the parents and the educators at issue, even if school's closed? And I think a lot of people are probably pretty flexible on that. Some people aren't, but school districts face loss of federal funding if they don't comply, and other sanctions if they don't comply with these laws. And as of right this very minute, I don't think the U.S. Department of Education has really weighed in on IEP meetings. I would expect that they would, because districts are going to need guidance. And these are things that I think people don't necessarily take into consideration. It's an additional layer of complication.
Well, Charyn, thank you so much for your time and for giving us some illumination on some things that I think maybe people didn't think about here on Daily Detroit.
Oh, my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity.
A piece of late breaking news as we finish up the podcast here. We just got word that SMART, the suburban bus system, will be offering free fares starting tomorrow, that's Tuesday, across the entire system. One thing to note is that FAST, and that's that fixed route service that's on Woodward and some other key roads, well, you're going to have to enter through the rear door if you're able-bodied in order to be more efficient. That's the change that they're making. They're also going to be closing the Downtown Transit Center and Royal Oak Transit Center to visitors. They will have customer service available, and we will put a link in the show notes. And we're done for today. Thank you so much for listening. If there are specific things you want to know about, email us at dailydetroit@gmail.com, and we will be sure to track it down. Also, thanks for dealing with so many phone calls and Skype interviews and all kinds of craziness. Considering the current circumstances, it's frankly the only way we can really do the show. I know I really prefer to do in-person interviews, but you can do what you can do, right? Well, I'm Jer Stays, and I truly mean this. Take care of each other, and hopefully we won't see each other around Detroit until it's time to get out of our houses. Snuggle your dogs and your people. Talk with you tomorrow.